"Take him for everything he's worth," my wife bragged while planning to steal our house. I gathered evidence of her fraud. Then the court day her plan was exposed. I'm 31. After nearly 5 years of marriage, I never once imagined that my life would be turned upside down by the person I loved most. We'd met at a mutual friend's wedding, where she was a bridesmaid and I was one of the groomsmen. I remember being struck by her infectious laugh and the way she could hold a conversation about anything, from classic literature to modern politics. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff started stacking chairs on tables. I found it endearing that she was more interested in our conversation than maintaining a perfect appearance. We married 2 years later in a modest ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Lisa wore her grandmother's pearl necklace and insisted on writing our own vows. Hers brought tears to everyone's eyes when she promised to always be honest and true, to face life's challenges together. The irony of those words still haunts me. The early years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We had our routines, movie nights, annual road trips. We weren't perfect, but we worked through our issues. When she lost her father to cancer in our 3rd year of marriage, I held her through countless nights of tears. It was a life built on trust, a bond that seemed unbreakable. We shared everything, from our deepest fears to our wildest dreams. Lisa knew about my childhood struggles with an alcoholic mother, and I knew about her insecurities stemming from her parents' messy divorce. We'd promised each other we'd never let our marriage end that way. We even had a running joke about being the annoying old couple holding hands in the nursing home. But one subtle shift in her behavior, one cryptic conversation, and I found myself on the edge of the darkest chapter I could never have predicted. Looking back, the signs were there. She started password protecting her phone, something she'd never done before. Our joint bank account saw mysterious withdrawals that she explained away as girls' trips and self-care expenses. The woman who once shared every detail of her day became increasingly vague about her whereabouts. It started with the house, our home, the place we'd built our lives together. We'd bought it 3 years into our marriage, a fixer-upper that needed more love than we initially realized. We spent countless weekends painting walls, replacing fixtures, and arguing over tile choices. Lisa had insisted on a yellow kitchen, saying it would bring warmth and happiness. The maple tree in the backyard held a tire swing where we'd planned for our future children to play. But 6 months before she filed for divorce, Lisa became oddly fixated on it. She started talking about refinancing, suggesting we put it solely in her name because of her better credit score. She brought up renovations we couldn't afford, insisting we take out additional loans. She even had an appraiser come by without telling me, claiming it was just out of curiosity. Little did I know it wasn't the house that interested her. It was what she could take from me. The woman I'd shared my life with was methodically planning to destroy everything we'd built. The same person who'd once surprised me with a homemade birthday cake was now secretly meeting with lawyers to figure out how to maximize her gains in our divorce. 2 months later, she hit me with divorce papers. Her sympathy was fake, and her smirk told me everything. The woman who used to light up rooms with her genuine smile now wore a calculated expression I didn't recognize. She thought she had already won. She believed that by putting the house solely in her name, she had effectively stolen my stake in everything. She even had a real estate agent lined up to sell the house, pocketing all the money. She thought I wouldn't fight back, maybe because I'd always been the more passive one in our relationship, the one who'd let her choose the restaurants, the one who'd compromised on vacation destinations. She thought I wouldn't know where to start and wouldn't have the strength to challenge her. After all, I was the one who'd always said, "Whatever makes you happy, honey," and meant it. But what she didn't know was that I had already started. The moment I noticed her changing passwords and having hushed phone conversations, I'd begun documenting everything. Every withdrawal, every mysterious absence, every conversation about the house. It was all recorded. I had emails, bank statements, and even recordings of her discussing her plans with her friends, who, to their credit, seemed uncomfortable with her schemes. The Lisa I married was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized, someone who could look me in the eye and lie about 5 years of shared life and love. But while she was busy planning her victory, I was preparing for war. Sometimes the quietest ones fight the hardest, and I was ready to show her exactly that. Looking back at our marriage now, I wonder if I ever really knew her at all. Was she always capable of such calculated betrayal, or did something change along the way? The memory of our last happy moment together feels like it belongs to different people in a different life. But one thing's certain, the house she's so desperate to take isn't just about money anymore. It's about justice, and I'm prepared to fight for it. Update 1. Hi everybody, before hearing what happened in the court, let me tell you about the red flags I missed. Lisa aimed for my house at first, when she decided to file for divorce. Looking back, the signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs leading to her ultimate betrayal. I had to recognize from the start, when she started following these lifestyle influencers on social media. These women, who branded themselves as successful and independent, shared about their lavish lives without the supposed burden of marriage. They posted endless stories about luxury vacations, designer shopping sprees, and spa days, all while preaching about how marriage was an outdated institution that held women back. They didn't have to do housework, didn't have to compromise on their dreams, and most importantly, they had complete control over their finances. I better realized how easily this influenced my wife. Lisa started spending hours scrolling through their content, liking and commenting on posts about financial independence and breaking free from societal expectations. She began repeating their catchphrases at dinner. Why should women settle? And marriage shouldn't mean sacrificing your dreams. What she didn't mention was how many of these influencers had gotten their wealth through divorces, taking their ex-husbands for everything they were worth. The change in her was gradual but unmistakable. She started making snide comments about our shared finances, suggesting that combining our money had been a mistake. She began questioning every joint decision we'd made, especially regarding the house. The woman who once loved our cozy Sunday mornings doing crossword puzzles together now spent that time watching videos about maximizing your divorce settlement. The first real sign came one evening while we were on the couch. We'd just finished watching a movie. Lisa casually mentioned refinancing the house under just her name, as if she were suggesting we try a new restaurant. I frowned, confused. Why would we do that? I asked, sensing something wasn't right. Her explanation seemed plausible at the time, a lower interest rate thanks to her better credit score. She had spreadsheets ready, showing how much we could save monthly. The rational side of me wanted to go along with it, but something felt off. Her manipulation was subtle but persistent. She'd leave articles about refinancing open on her laptop where I could see them. She'd mention friends who'd done the same thing, always emphasizing how much money they'd saved. When I expressed doubts, she'd get emotional, asking if I didn't trust her judgment anymore. She even started suggesting that my hesitation showed I didn't value her financial acumen. But I trusted her, and that trust is what ultimately cost me. She used every trick in the book, guilt, manipulation, even tears when necessary. She assured me it was just a minor technicality and that we could always add my name back later. But the way she said it, "You trust me, right?" triggered something in my gut. It wasn't just the words, but the calculated look in her eyes, so different from the warm gaze I'd fallen in love with. She started creating artificial urgency, claiming interest rates were about to skyrocket, and we needed to act fast. She'd leave refinancing documents around the house, casually mentioning deadlines and potential savings we were missing out on. When I still hesitated, she switched tactics, suggesting my reluctance meant I didn't see her as an equal partner in our marriage. I didn't argue openly. Instead, I took the subtle step of consulting with a lawyer. My lawyer immediately saw through Lisa's plan. He explained how common this tactic was, spouses transferring assets before filing for divorce. He warned me to never sign anything, emphasizing how this could be part of a larger scheme to disenfranchise me from our marital assets. But Lisa, she was already ahead of the game, more calculating than I could have imagined. One day, she told me the refinance was all set, her voice casual as if discussing the weather. She'd done everything online, she said, and claimed I didn't need to sign anything because she'd taken care of it all. But I knew she'd forged my signature. The proof was right there in the refinancing documents, a signature that looked like mine but wasn't. And the house? It was now in her name alone. She'd learned these tactics from her new online community, women sharing tips about how to secure your assets before divorce. They advised each other on timing, legal loopholes, and how to manipulate their husbands into signing away their rights. Lisa had followed their playbook to the letter, but she hadn't counted on me being prepared for her schemes. The woman who once shared everything with me, who used to say, "What's mine is yours," with genuine love, had transformed into someone who saw our marriage as a transaction to be maximized. She'd replaced our shared dreams with a calculated plan to take everything for herself, inspired by strangers on the internet who preached independence through deception. Update 2. Back to the court day. When we finally ended up in court, Lisa was the picture of calm. Her smirk, it all screamed confidence. She sat there, occasionally whispering to her high-priced attorney, shooting me condescending glances as if I were already defeated. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd outsmarted me. What Lisa didn't know was that I'd spent months meticulously building my case. Every late-night phone call she thought I couldn't hear, every girls' night out, where she actually met with her lawyer, every suspicious bank transaction. I had documented it all. I'd installed security cameras in our home office after noticing documents being moved around. Those cameras caught her practicing my signature, recording her methodical attempts to perfect the forgery. Her lawyer argued that the house, as evidenced by the mortgage and title records, was hers. The attorney presented a timeline of events that conveniently omitted key details, painting Lisa as the primary contributor to our home's equity. She was smug, sure that I had no chance. Her legal team had prepared a compelling narrative about how she had protected our assets through legal refinancing. But I let them talk. The longer they spoke, the more they dug their own grave. When my lawyer stood up, he wasted no time. He started with the security footage, crystal clear video showing Lisa at my desk, practicing my signature over and over. The timestamp matched perfectly with the date on the refinancing documents. The courtroom grew silent as the video played, Lisa's calculated movements displayed for all to see. Next came the digital evidence. My lawyer presented screenshots of Lisa's social media activities, her involvement in private Facebook groups where women shared tips about hiding assets before divorce, her direct messages with other members discussing how to transfer property without spousal consent. We had emails she'd written to her friends, bragging about her plan to take him for everything he's worth. The forensic handwriting expert's testimony was particularly damaging. He meticulously demonstrated how Lisa had forged my signature, pointing out the subtle differences that proved it wasn't authentic. The expert showed examples of my genuine signature alongside the forged ones, highlighting the telltale signs of imitation. Then came the bank records. We had proof of Lisa withdrawing large sums of money in the months leading up to the divorce, creating a secret account where she'd been squirreling away funds. The transactions aligned perfectly with her suspicious girls' trips and spa days, events that, as we proved through credit card records and witness statements, never actually happened. Lisa's smirk faltered. The judge leaned in, and for the first time, Lisa's confidence wavered. Her perfectly maintained composure began to crack as my lawyer presented evidence of the fraud she had committed, the forged signature, the transfer of ownership without my knowledge, the forged documents. The paper trail was undeniable. The courtroom was quiet as my lawyer continued, revealing the most damning piece of evidence, the prenuptial agreement. It stated that all major financial decisions regarding our joint assets required both of our consents. Lisa had conveniently forgotten about this clause, thinking I wouldn't remember it either. The fraudulent transfer of the house violated that agreement, and that meant Lisa would walk away with nothing. But we weren't done. My lawyer then presented evidence of Lisa's attempts to intimidate witnesses, text messages threatening our mutual friends if they testified about her plans, emails to her co-conspirators discussing how to keep everyone quiet. Her entire scheme unraveled thread by thread. I could see the shock on her face. The color drained from her cheeks as each piece of evidence was presented. All her scheming, all her manipulation meant nothing now. The carefully constructed facade she'd built was crumbling. She wasn't going to get the house. She wasn't going to get anything, and she was going to pay for what she had done. Even when the judge ruled in my favor, when the evidence was clear and irrefutable, Lisa tried to fight back. She exploded in court, her last-ditch attempt to avoid the consequences of her actions. She stood up, screaming about how I had manipulated her, how I had trapped her in an unhappy marriage. But the more she raged, the more the truth became undeniable. Her outburst only served to confirm her instability and desperation. She accused me of setting her up, claiming I had orchestrated everything to make her look bad. She begged for forgiveness, tears streaming down her face, the same tactical crying she'd used to manipulate me for months. But I knew better than to believe her. "You spent months planning to screw me over," I said, my voice steady. "You don't get to play the loving wife now." The judge slammed the gavel down, dismissing Lisa's behavior with visible disgust. The house was returned to my name, and Lisa's attempts at fraud were formally documented. She was found guilty of mortgage fraud, and she would be responsible for all legal fees and damages. The judgment was comprehensive. She would have to pay back every penny she'd hidden away, plus interest. The once confident woman was now reduced to a shell of her former self. Her expensive lawyer, seeing the writing on the wall, withdrew from the case. Her social media friends, the ones who'd encouraged her schemes, were nowhere to be found. She was left with no one. Update 3. Hi there, I guess you wanted to know what happened next after the court, right? The aftermath was swift and severe. Lisa's professional reputation was destroyed. No bank would hire someone convicted of mortgage fraud. Her social circle evaporated as friends learned of her deception. The influencers who'd inspired her schemes blocked her when she tried to blame them for her choices. As she left the courthouse that day, shoulders slumped, mascara streaking down her face, I felt no joy in her defeat. Only sadness for the woman I'd once loved, who'd thrown away 5 years of marriage for a chance at easy money. She'd lost everything: her home, her reputation, her career, and most importantly, her integrity. The last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents, working retail to pay off her legal fees. Her social media accounts, once filled with ambitious plans and materialistic dreams, went dark. The woman who'd thought she could outsmart everyone had outsmarted only herself. I had my house back, and more importantly, I had my dignity. The betrayal had been hard to swallow, but in the end, I realized that I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. The first few months were the hardest. Coming home to an empty house filled with memories wasn't easy. But slowly, I started reclaiming these spaces as my own. I repainted the walls, replaced the furniture, and transformed the house into something new. It took time to heal, but I slowly rebuilt my life. I joined a local hiking group, something Lisa had always dismissed as boring. Through them, I discovered a passion for outdoor photography. I regained my focus at work, throwing myself into new projects. The energy I'd spent managing Lisa's moods and demands now went into my career. Within 6 months, I earned a promotion I'd been hesitant to pursue while married. Lisa had always said my current position was stable enough. Most importantly, I rediscovered who I was outside of my marriage. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd lost myself so completely in another person. My therapist helped me recognize patterns I'd ignored, red flags I'd dismissed, and boundaries I'd failed to set. The biggest lesson I learned? Always protect yourself. Always be aware of what's happening around you, even when you trust someone completely. I made the mistake of thinking I knew Lisa, of thinking I knew my marriage. In the end, the only person I could truly trust was myself. This doesn't mean living in fear or suspicion, but rather maintaining healthy boundaries and self-respect. Today, 2 years later, I'm dating again, cautiously but openly. I've learned to balance trust with wisdom, love with self-protection. The house that Lisa tried to take from me has become a true home, filled with new memories and new possibilities. I've even started hosting monthly dinner parties for friends, something Lisa always said was too much trouble. Lisa thought she could take everything from me, but in the end, she was the one who lost it all. I gained something invaluable, the knowledge that I could survive betrayal and emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself. Sometimes losing someone who doesn't truly love you is the best thing that can happen to you. It frees you to find the life and the love you actually deserve.